The bullet was meant for his head, but I stepped in and took the shot myself, firing at my father's enforcer instead. The warehouse in Brooklyn went silent except for the echo of the gunshot and the sound of the enforcer hitting the concrete floor. My father, Vincenzo Rossi, the most powerful mafia boss in New York, stared at me with a mix of rage and disbelief as I caught the stranger in my arms before he could collapse. "Jake, what the fuck have you done?" My father roared, his voice bouncing off the metal walls. I did not have an answer. All I knew was that when I walked into the room and saw this man on his knees blindfolded and beaten, something inside me snapped. He was not begging. He was not crying. He just knelt there with a quiet dignity that hit me harder than any punch I had taken in my life. His jaw was set, his shoulders straight despite the blood trickling from his lip. When the blindfold slipped a little, I caught a glimpse of his eyes, sharp green and full of fire. In that moment, I could not let my father end him. "He is coming with me," I said, my voice low but firm. I helped the man to his feet. He was taller than me, lean and muscular, with dark hair matted with sweat. His shirt was torn, revealing bruises on his torso. He leaned on me heavily, his breath hot against my neck. My father pointed the gun at us both. "You cross me for some lowlife dealer? This piece of shit shorted us on the last shipment. He is a rat." "I do not think he is," I lied. I did not know anything about him, but I felt it in my gut. Or maybe it was the way my heart raced when our eyes met. The other men in the room, my father's loyal soldiers, shifted uncomfortably. No one challenged the boss's son lightly. My older brother Tony would have shot the guy without a second thought. But Tony was not here, and I was the one who had always been the good son, the one who followed orders even when they twisted my stomach. "Take him and get out," my father finally spat. "But if he causes any trouble, it is on your head, Jake. And you know what that means." I nodded and half-carried the man out to my black SUV parked outside. The night air was cold, the streets of industrial Brooklyn quiet except for distant sirens. I drove him to one of our safe houses in Manhattan, a nondescript apartment building we used for situations like this. The whole drive he was silent, but I could feel him watching me. Once inside the apartment, I locked the door and helped him to the couch. "What is your name?" I asked as I grabbed the first aid kit. "Ethan," he said, his voice hoarse. "Ethan Kane. I am Jake Rossi." He winced as I cleaned the cut on his lip. His eyes never left mine. "Why did you save me?" "Your old man was ready to kill me." I shrugged, focusing on bandaging his ribs. "Maybe I saw something in you. Or maybe I am tired of watching people die for no reason." He laughed softly, then groaned in pain. "In your line of work? That is a dangerous way to think." We talked late into the night. He told me he was a small-time guy from Chicago trying to make it in New York, got mixed up with the wrong people. I knew it was probably bullshit, but I did not push. Instead, I told him about growing up in the life, the expectations, the violence that never left you. I did not tell him about the nights I lay awake wondering if there was more to life than this, or how I had known since I was a teenager that I was different, that the girls my family pushed on me never stirred anything in me, but a certain type of man did. By the time the sun rose, Ethan was asleep on the couch, and I was sitting in the chair across from him, watching the steady rise and fall of his chest. I had saved him from the Mafia boss. But as I sat there feeling a pull toward him that I had never allowed myself to feel before, I had no idea that he was the FBI agent planted to take down my entire family. The next morning I made coffee and eggs, the simple domestic act feeling strange in my hands. Ethan woke up slowly, his green eyes finding me immediately. "You did not have to do any of this," he said, sitting up with a grimace. "I know," I replied, handing him a plate. "But here we are." We ate in silence at first, then the conversation picked up again. He asked about my family, and I gave him the polished version, the one I told outsiders. My father built an empire from nothing. My mother kept the home together. My brother Tony was the muscle. I was the one who handled the books, the legitimate side that kept the IRS off our backs. What I did not say was how much I hated it, how every deal felt like another chain around my neck. Ethan listened like he really cared. His questions were gentle but probing. "Do you ever think about walking away?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Walking away is not an option in this family. You are born and you die in it. Or they make sure you do." He nodded like he understood, but something in his expression shifted for just a second. I brushed it off as pain from his injuries. By afternoon, I had to check in with my father. I left Ethan with strict instructions to stay inside and drove to the family compound in Queens. My father was waiting in his study, the air thick with cigar smoke. "You embarrassed me last night, Jake," he said without looking up from his papers. "That dealer could have been feeding information to the feds." "He was not," I insisted. "I checked him out. He is clean." My father finally met my eyes. "You better be right. And do not forget what is coming next month. The alliance with the Genovese family. Their daughter is a good match. Pretty. Loyal. She will give you strong sons." The words landed like lead in my stomach. I had heard this speech 100 times. Marry for the family. Produce heirs. Keep the bloodline pure and the empire strong. No one ever asked what I wanted. No one knew that the thought of touching a woman that way left me cold, while the memory of Ethan's body against mine in the warehouse kept replaying in my head. "I will think about it," I muttered and left before he could press harder. Back at the safe house, Ethan was standing by the window looking out at the city. The sunlight caught his profile, and for a moment I could not breathe. He turned and smiled, a real smile that reached his eyes. "Everything okay?" he asked. "Yeah, I lied. Just family stuff." He walked over and placed a hand on my shoulder. The touch was light, but it sent electricity through me. "Thank you again, Jake. For everything." That night we talked longer. He told me about losing his parents young, about scraping by in Chicago. I shared stories from my childhood, the good ones before the violence became normal. We laughed about stupid things, and the sound of his laugh made the apartment feel less like a hiding place and more like a refuge. When he fell asleep, I stayed awake thinking about the choice I had made. Saving him had been impulsive, dangerous, but sitting there watching him, I could not regret it. Not yet. The days blurred together in that Manhattan apartment. I brought groceries and clothes for Ethan, making sure no one followed me. My father called twice demanding updates on business, but I kept the conversations short. Tony texted threats about me going soft. I ignored them all. The only thing that mattered was the man healing on my couch. Ethan grew stronger every day. The bruises faded and his movements became smoother. We fell into a routine that felt dangerously normal. Mornings we drank coffee and read the news on my laptop. Afternoons we watched old movies on the television. Nights we talked until our voices grew hoarse. One evening, after a particularly bad call from my mother reminding me about the upcoming dinner with the Genovese family, I came back tense and angry. Ethan noticed immediately. "Want to talk about it?" he asked from the kitchen where he was heating up pasta. I dropped onto the couch and rubbed my temples. "Family expects me to marry some girl I barely know. Says it is good for business. Good for the family name." Ethan stirred the sauce quietly. "And what do you want, Jake?" The question hung in the air. No one had ever asked me that. Not really. I looked at him and the words came out before I could stop them. "I want something real. Something that is mine. Not arranged or forced or wrapped in obligations." He set the spoon down and walked over, sitting beside me. Our knees touched. "That is not easy in your world, is it?" "No," I admitted. "In my world, wanting the wrong thing gets you killed." His hand found mine on the cushion between us. The touch was tentative at first, then firmer. "Maybe the wrong thing is only wrong because people say so." My heart hammered. I had spent years burying this part of myself. The part that noticed the line of a man's jaw or the strength in his hands. The part that dreamed of connection without shame. Now here was Ethan looking at me like he saw all of it and was not afraid. I pulled my hand away gently. "I should check the perimeter," I muttered and escaped to the hallway. But the feeling stayed with me, the warmth of his skin, the way his eyes had softened. That night, after dinner, we sat closer on the couch watching a documentary about the city. His shoulder brushed mine and neither of us moved away. When the movie ended, he turned to me. "You saved my life, Jake. I do not know how to repay that." "You do not have to," I said. But part of me wanted him to. Part of me wanted him to lean in and close the distance I had been fighting since the warehouse. Instead, he stood and stretched. "I am going to shower. Thanks for everything today." I nodded and watched him walk away. Alone in the living room, I let myself imagine what it would be like to be honest with someone. To not hide. The thought terrified me as much as it excited me. The next morning, my brother Tony showed up unannounced at the building. I met him downstairs in the lobby, keeping him away from the apartment. "What the hell are you doing hiding out here?" Tony demanded. He was bigger than me, broader and meaner. "Dad is losing patience. The Genovese dinner is in 2 weeks. You need to be there smiling at that girl." "I am handling things," I said, keeping my voice even. Tony stepped closer. "You better not be going soft because of that dealer you saved. If he is a problem, I will take care of him myself." "He is not a problem," I snapped. The protectiveness in my voice surprised even me. Tony studied me for a long moment. "You have changed, little brother. I hope it is not going to get you killed." He left and I went back upstairs, my hands shaking. Ethan was waiting in the kitchen. "Everything okay?" he asked again. I wanted to tell him everything. The pressure, the fear, the way my family would never accept who I really was. Instead I said, "Just my brother being my brother." Ethan poured me a cup of coffee. When he handed it over, our fingers touched, and this time I did not pull away immediately. His eyes held mine, and I felt the pull stronger than ever. That afternoon we went out for a short walk around the block. The sun was bright, the city alive around us. For a few minutes we were just two guys walking together. No mafia, no FBI, no secrets. Ethan laughed at something I said, and the sound made me feel lighter than I had in years. Back inside, he stopped me in the hallway. "Jake, I need you to know I am grateful. More than grateful." Before I could respond, he hugged me. It was brief but real. His arms around me, his chest against mine. I closed my eyes and let myself feel it. When he pulled back, we were both breathing a little harder. Neither of us said anything, but the air between us had changed. The hug changed everything, even if we pretended it had not. Over the next few days, the touches became more frequent. A hand on my back when he passed me in the kitchen. Our legs pressed together on the couch. Each one sent sparks through me, and I knew he felt them too. One night, after a long talk about dreams he had never pursued, I finally asked the question that had been burning in me. "Have you ever been with a man, Ethan?" He did not look surprised. He set his wine glass down and met my eyes. "Yes, once. A long time ago. It did not end well, but it was real." My throat tightened. "And you?" I swallowed hard. "Never. Not openly. In my family that is not allowed. It is weakness. Shame." Ethan moved closer until our faces were inches apart. "It is not weakness, Jake. It is who you are." The kiss, when it happened, was slow and careful, like we were both afraid the other would disappear. His lips were warm and tasted like the red wine we had been drinking. I had imagined this moment so many times, but the reality was better. Softer. More honest. When we pulled apart, he rested his forehead against mine. "We do not have to rush anything." I nodded, but my hands were already reaching for him again. We kissed for a long time on the couch, learning each other without pressure. His hands stayed respectful on my back and shoulders. Mine traced the line of his jaw and the muscles of his arms. It was not about sex. It was about finally letting myself feel something true. The next morning I woke up with him still asleep beside me on the couch. We had fallen asleep talking after the kisses. I watched him for a while, the peace on his face, and felt a wave of guilt crash over me. My family was planning a future for me that did not include this. And here I was risking everything for a man I had known for less than 2 weeks. My phone buzzed with a text from my mother. "Dinner is set for next Friday. Do not disappoint us, son." I deleted the message and went to make breakfast. When Ethan woke, he smiled at me like nothing in the world was wrong. We ate together and talked about normal things, movies and favorite foods. But underneath it all, the tension was building. My two worlds were getting closer to colliding. That afternoon I had to go meet a supplier for the family business. I left Ethan with a burner phone and strict instructions. While I was gone negotiating prices and shaking hands with men who would kill me if they knew what I had done the night before, I kept thinking about him. The way he looked at me. The way he made me feel seen. When I returned, he had made dinner. Simple steak and vegetables. We ate, and then he pulled me into another kiss, this one deeper. "I am falling for you, Jake," he whispered against my mouth. "I did not plan on it, but it is happening." I kissed him back harder, trying to drown out the voice in my head that said this could only end in pain. "I am falling too," I admitted. "And it scares the hell out of me." We spent the evening wrapped up in each other, talking about what a different life could look like. A life without the family empire. A life where I could be honest. Ethan listened and offered quiet encouragement, but I noticed the way his eyes sometimes drifted to the window like he was watching for something. Later that night, after he fell asleep, I lay awake beside him. The moral weight of what I was doing pressed down on me. I had betrayed my father by saving Ethan. Now I was betraying my family by loving him. But walking away from Ethan felt impossible. He had become the only real thing in my life. Suspicion started small. A missed call from my handler that Ethan dismissed too quickly. The way he sometimes stepped into the bathroom with his phone when he thought I was not looking. I told myself I was being paranoid. The man I was falling in love with could not be playing me. Not after everything we had shared. But the doubts grew. One afternoon, while he was in the shower, I picked up his phone from the counter. It was locked, but a notification flashed across the screen. A text from a contact named Control. It read, "Update on Rossi target. Progress." My stomach dropped. I put the phone back exactly where I found it and walked to the window, trying to breathe. When Ethan came out with a towel around his waist, he saw my face and knew immediately something was wrong. "Jake? What happened?" I turned to him. "Who is Control, Ethan?" The color drained from his face. He did not deny it. He just stood there looking at me with eyes full of regret and something that looked a lot like fear. "I can explain," he started. "Explain?" I laughed bitterly. "You are a Fed. You were sent to destroy my family, and you used me to get close." He stepped forward, but I backed away. "It started that way," he said quickly. "I was undercover. My assignment was to infiltrate the Rossi operation. But then you saved me and everything changed. I fell in love with you, Jake. That part is real." I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to. But the betrayal cut too deep. "How long have you been lying to me?" "Since the beginning," he admitted. "But the feelings are not a lie. Please believe that." I grabbed my jacket. "I need air." I walked the streets of Manhattan for hours. The city moved around me, but I felt numb. My father had been right. Ethan was a rat. And I had brought him into our world. Worse, I had given him my heart. When I returned to the apartment, Ethan was sitting on the couch waiting. His eyes were red like he had been crying. "I called my handler," he said quietly. "I told them I am compromised. I cannot finish the mission." I stared at him. "Why would you do that?" "Because I choose you," he said simply. "Over the job. Over everything." The words hung between us. I wanted to believe him, but the trust was shattered. Still, when he stood and pulled me into his arms, I did not resist. We held each other tightly, and I felt the tears on my own face. That night we talked until dawn. He told me the full truth. He was FBI. The operation had been running for months. My family was deep into drug trafficking and money laundering. The evidence was mounting. But meeting me had made him question everything he believed about right and wrong. I told him about the pressure from my family, the arranged marriage, the fear of being exposed as gay. We held nothing back. The conversation was raw and painful, but it felt like the first truly honest one we had ever had. In the morning, we made a decision together. We would run. Leave New York. Start somewhere new where no one knew us. It was risky. My family would hunt us. The FBI might come after Ethan. But it was the only choice that let us both survive. We started packing that afternoon. As I folded clothes into a bag, I felt a strange sense of freedom. For the first time in my life, I was choosing my own path, even if it meant losing everything else. The raid happened at dawn 3 days later. I woke to the sound of boots on the stairs and the crack of the door being kicked in. Federal agents flooded the apartment shouting commands. Ethan was already moving, pushing me toward the fire escape. "Go, Jake!" he yelled. "I will hold them off." I hesitated. "I am not leaving you." He grabbed my face and kissed me hard. "I love you. Now run." I climbed out the window and dropped to the alley below. Gunshots rang out behind me, but I kept moving. I ran through the back streets until my lungs burned. When I finally stopped in a small park, I realized I was crying. My phone buzzed. It was Tony. "Where are you?" "The feds hit the compound. Dad is in custody. They are looking for you too." I did not answer. Instead, I found a payphone and called the only person I thought might help. An old family lawyer who owed me a favor. He arranged a meeting in a quiet diner in Brooklyn. When I got there, Ethan was already sitting in a booth. He looked exhausted but alive. He had surrendered to buy me time, but his handler had agreed to a deal. If he testified against my family, they would protect us both. I sat down across from him. "You could have let them take me." "I would never do that," he said. "I told them the truth. That I love you and that you are not like the rest of your family. You tried to get out." The next weeks were a blur of safe houses and interviews. I gave the FBI what I knew about the legitimate parts of the business. Not enough to destroy my father completely, but enough to show I was cooperating. Ethan stood by me through all of it. My family disowned me publicly. My mother cried on the news saying I had betrayed them. Tony swore revenge. The only person who reached out was my younger sister, who texted me in secret that she understood and was proud of me for choosing love. The moral dilemma tore at me every night. Had I done the right thing by turning against my blood? Or had I destroyed the only family I had ever known for a man who had started as my enemy? Ethan held me when the guilt became too much. He reminded me that the empire had been built on pain and that I deserved a life without it. One night, in a safe house in upstate New York, we sat on the porch looking at the stars. "Do you regret saving me that night in the warehouse?" he asked. I took his hand. "Never. Even if it cost me everything." The trial was brutal. My father sat across the courtroom every day, staring at me with cold eyes. When I took the stand, I felt the weight of every choice I had made. I told the truth about the business, the violence, the way it had trapped me. Ethan testified, too, his voice steady as he described how the operation had changed when he met me. The jury found my father guilty on multiple counts. Tony received a lighter sentence because of his cooperation in other areas. The family empire crumbled. Some parts of it had helped people in the neighborhood, but most of it had only brought suffering. I had to live with that gray area for the rest of my life. After the verdict, Ethan and I moved to a small town in Oregon, far from New York and the shadows of the past. We bought a house with a yard and started building something normal. I got a job at a local accounting firm using the skills I had learned from the legitimate side of the family business. Ethan worked as a consultant for law enforcement training but never went back into the field. We faced prejudice even there. Small-town gossip about two men living together. But we faced it together. Slowly the wounds healed. We learned to trust again. We learned to love without fear. One evening, as we sat on our porch watching the sunset, Ethan turned to me. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you had not saved me that night?" I smiled and pulled him closer. "Every day. And every day I am grateful I did." The price had been high. I lost my family, my name, and the only life I had ever known. But I gained freedom and a love that felt worth every sacrifice. Still, the questions lingered. Had I been a traitor or a man finally brave enough to choose what was right? Had Ethan been the destroyer or the savior who pulled me from a life that was slowly killing me? In the end, we both paid the price for our choices. But we paid it together. Was saving him the right decision or the biggest mistake of my life?